Hi, it's Dr. Ben. All right. The next question is from Lori, and this one sent me back to immunology school. What are you doing to me? So the question is actually a really good one, and it's based on a new preprint. And here's the question. So this new paper from University of Virginia has me concerned for my daughter with severe food allergies. It suggests that elevated levels of IL-13 and IL-7, so IL-13 and IL-7 stand for interleukin 13 and 7, and these are the interleukins in general are going to be things that regulate the way the immune system works. They do all kinds of stuff. Some turn things up, some turn things down, and others do real specific things. There's a lot, and I don't think there's any one of these interleukins that only does one thing or like is only made by one cell type. I think they're pretty much very, very complicated. Not quite fractal, but I don't know. We're approaching that level of complexity. Yeah. Ugh, ugh, this is the stuff that makes my head hurt at immunology talks. And thank goodness that there are immunologists out there who can actually handle this. All right, so anyway, suggests that IL-13 and IL-7 levels, like if those are high, that predicts that a person would have be more likely to go on a ventilator in this study. Now, the study had 57 people in it, and I counted the little pink dots. I think there are 24 that ended up on ventilators, which is a really high percentage. If this was just 57 random people showing up at hospital, either they're putting more people on a ventilator than in other places, I think, or I don't know, or they're only putting pretty severe people into the hospital. I mean, that could be it too. I don't think anybody's messing with the data. I just think that the data set itself looks a little weird, based on what we've seen out of other parts of the world. But whatever, the data is the data, and it's our job to interpret it, not to just critique it. Yeah. Wish it was different. So let's see. But isn't IL-13 already elevated in kids with allergies? Yes, it is elevated in kids with asthma, and yes, it is involved in some kind of allergic reaction. So, all right, here we go. Yeah, that's sub Wikipedia level Dr. Ben here. Um, IL-13 apparently drives B cells to make a kind of antibody called IgE, immunoglobulin type E. And this is one of the 5 main types, and there's a couple of subtypes of IgG that you can make. And IgE is one of these things that we think used to have a really big role in protecting proto-hominids, like in caveman times and before that, from things like parasites, things like fungus. This is one of these things that's left over from a bygone era and now mostly just gets into trouble. It doesn't have a whole lot to do. And so IgE is a type of antibody, and it's bound really well by a couple of cell types, including mast cells, and I think maybe also eosinophils, although immunologists, whatever, go wild. Tell me I know nothing. You'll be correct. And these are cells that have these little granules stored up inside that they can then release, which gives you all the symptoms of what allergy or asthma feels like. IL-13 is highly expressed or produced, let's say produced, in conditions that sort of close down the big airways in the lung, asthma. Yeah, from what I can glean so far. So, first of all, before we can assess a paper like this, I like to have a look at the data, and the data is complex and doesn't 100% just make intuitive sense. It's not like a level is high, therefore you're going on a ventilator kind of thing. So my little test of, how sane is this or not, is that they have all of the amounts of IL-13 in each patient color-coded, and it must have taken a ton of money to be able to do all of the tests to count up the amount of all of these cytokines. That's above and beyond and a really useful thing to do. I'm glad the researchers thought to do this. They didn't find some of the things that people normally do find. So they didn't find a strong association with interleukin 6, which we've talked about before, and which is something that other larger studies have said is most likely very strongly involved in COVID disease. And the things that they're putting together, there's a growth factor, and then there's interleukin 13, and then there's interleukin 7. And these three were all coming up together, apparently. They were either high together or low together, suggesting, as the authors say, that they're all turned on by the same process. So these may be three effects of something else, and it may be the something else that's actually the thing that makes it more likely that you end up on a ventilator. It's not clear from this data, but this data is useful. It's a puzzle piece. We just gotta figure out where all the rest of the puzzle is, and then how to stick this together. Anyway, my little test of rationality was I looked up the two people that had the highest amount of interleukin 13 in them, and I just went across to see, okay, are these two both on a ventilator? That would drive the correlation. The answer is no. Neither of those two, even though half the data set went on a ventilator, was on a ventilator. And so unless I'm reading this backwards and it was a low amount of those two things, which I don't think so, then this is a conclusion that comes out of like the entire data set, but is not just a conclusion that would jump out at you from looking at a little piece of the data set. And it also shows that there's quite a range. You can have the highest levels that they measured of interleukin 13, and that does not necessarily mean that you're going on a ventilator. So this is information. This is, like I said, this is a puzzle piece. And all puzzle pieces are useful at some point and in some way. And I'm glad we have one extra one. I don't think this means you need to necessarily worry. Yes, I would say your daughter may have, but is not guaranteed to have, elevated interleukin 13 levels just as like a normal everyday life thing. And it may not be the levels by themselves. It may be whatever it is that's the big switch that's turning up those levels in the people that eventually needed to go to ventilators. And we don't know what that is, and so we don't have any idea whether that even applies in this situation. And so I would say, don't worry anymore unnecessarily. Definitely keep your daughter away from COVID-19 and yourself and everybody else, because that's the right thing to do. But I don't think that this particular paper is strong evidence that there's any worse risk than there already is. And there's plenty of risk already. Yeah, we don't need things to be worse. That was a good question. I don't know. I don't know how well I did. The immunologist can grade me, but it's not going to be great. But oh well. Yeah, we just hack our way through. Thanks very much. This was Ask Dr. Ben.